Let's talk about Cyberpunk Edgerunners, Netflix's latest anime spectacular series. This one is based in the world from CD Projekt Red's video game Cyberpunk 2077, devised by Mike Pondsmith. Now, right off the bat, I'm gonna come clean. I've never played Cyberpunk, so my perspective on this series is going to come purely from an outsider's point of view. I'm gonna recap some key plot details from this standalone season, sharing my own personal thoughts and feelings on the show. If you'd like to discuss your own, as well as any cool links to the game the show has, share them in the comments below. There will be spoilers ahead. So, in Edgerunners, we jump right into Night City, a futuristic city obsessed with technological body modification. We follow David, a young man whose mother is killed, and he sets out to become an Edgerunner, aka a cyberpunk, which means being a mercenary outlaw. David suffers a lot from the way Night City's structure is devised, effectively being stuck in a deep pool of debt. Even when his mother was alive, she struggled to provide for him and worked extra to be able to get David a good education, which he winds up squandering and getting kicked out of the prestigious academy he attends. So David is a down and out kid basically, no money, no hope in life, but also full of grief from his mother's death. He aims that in a rage at the system and thus mods himself into a hulking tank to be able to become an Edgerunner, joining a crew along the way, including characters such as Rebecca, Kiwi, and his love interest, Lucy. Lucy and David have quite a nice relationship in this series. They're both physically and psychologically altered due to the way the world is structured, so they kinda see eye to eye from that level. They've both had a really tough time in this location. Lucy also has a fantasy of wanting to go to the moon, which becomes an emotional subplot for her and David. That was handled really rather well. Honesty be told on my end, Edgerunners does have a lot of characters and crews and locations. At times for me personally, it was a little tough to track. I feel like perhaps going into this show with prior knowledge to the game, you'd be able to latch onto it a lot more easily. However, I do think that from my point of view, the story of David and Lucy was the solid metallic spine that held the rest of the show in place. Because ultimately, this show was to me far more about its blistering action set pieces and bursting neon lights than anything else. Visually, Edgerunners was stunning to look at, really psychedelic in a lot of places, and the animation team Trigger got creative. They did a brilliant job here, and the whole series is like a DMT powered battery. One standout element to me is David's tech that he acquires early on in the show that enables him to slow down time and move more quickly, creating a strobe effect, like frames of his body lingering in the air as he moves, shaded with bright colours. It looked so awesome. And also, the gunplay throughout the show here was excellent. There's a vast variety of weaponry to accompany the excellent set pieces. It may have at times been a bit of a blurred spectrum for my eyes to process, but nonetheless impressive. Oh, and another little point on visuals, throughout the show people call each other, and I really enjoyed how the calls were displayed on screen. That was a nice touch. Also, something that stood out right from the off is the level of violence. This show has a lot of blood swilling around inside it that bursts all over the Night City pavements. It's brutally beautiful. Brutiful, if you will? Yeah, no, maybe not. And makes the action here so investable, knowing how much destruction and carnage are going to shower the screen with red. To accompany that severity of bloodshed, at times the story here can get really bleak. Like, dark stuff goes on here. And of course, me being me, I thoroughly enjoyed that. It injected weight to the world and not just made it a flashy action series. It was the actions of the characters that had meaning. Their struggles and having to overcome danger in every episode added a high level of distress to the show, and fundamentally the David character is a tragic one. His entire arc is so unforgiving that his death in the end almost felt like a mercy kill to me. David represents the very worst impact Night City can have on a person and displays just how high the fall from grace can be in this location. And in terms of that location, yeah, my awareness of the world of Cyberpunk may be limited, but visually it's a great futuristic neo-noir setting akin to the world of Blade Runner, which I'm sure was a huge influence on the original game's design. It'd be really surprising if it wasn't. And though the game is in 3D render graphics, that world translates into an anime world amazingly well. The palette of Night City is fabulous. It's a rich, detailed, and colourful setting that gels so well with the striking art style of the animation here. A lot of Ghost in the Shell flavours to be tasted. It's picturesque, dystopian, and flowing with electricity and light of all shades. And the way the show is done makes you feel the scale of this world. Like, it feels enormous, especially when characters go to the city outskirts towards the nomad lands. I definitely need to talk about this show's big evil capitalist villain, Faraday. Now, I've actually said this to a couple of mates prior to watching this show, but I want to air it out here on the channel. I'm going to set up a debate in the comments. Does Giancarlo Esposito have to be the villain in everything he's in? Gus Fring is arguably the greatest TV villain of all time. That's undoubtable, and despite having a lengthy career prior to playing Gus Fring, that was the role that catapulted Esposito into popular culture. However, since then, he's been the big moth bad in The Mandalorian, the big dictator bad in Far Cry 6, the big corporate bad in The Boys. He's even voiced Lex Luthor and Ra's al Ghul, and now, despite being fan cast as Professor X for the future of the MCU, many have reversed that casting into having him as Magneto. So for Esposito to be yet again voicing a major villain here, it really does make me wonder, is he becoming a typecast villain in the same way The Rock and Idris Elba are typecast heroes? That's no discredit to Esposito here, he does a great job as he always does, but just something about this casting makes me think every huge franchise under the sun is pulling on his limbs for ownership. Please, Giancarlo, be our villain! The Faraday character here isn't even all that interesting, other than having 3 eyes on one side of his face. That's about it. Big evil corporate man is effectively all he is here, and that's your lot. He's got Esposito's sinister nature, but he didn't woo me as a great bad guy. Another thing I want to comment on is the show's soundtrack, which is excellent. The main theme by Franz Ferdinand is great, but the song choice for the rest of the show is excellent too. It was awesome to hear brutal deathcore breakdowns and gutturals too. Like, they've not chosen what TV execs think is metal, they've chosen some filthy stuff here, and that was cool. But even the incidental music composed by Akira Yamaoka was really nice, synthy and bassy, like a combination of the electronic and the organic. It fit the show really well. Overall, Cyberpunk Edgerunners was a blast. Fantastic action, a good core story, was quite a lot to process at times, but on subsequent watches, I'm sure I'd absorb more of its richness. Edgerunners has been described as its own self-contained standalone story, but I think there is potential for future Cyberpunk series to explore different parts of that world. It's certainly large and detailed enough to be able to pull it off. I am aware that in the game you get the option to select either a street kid, a nomad, or a corpo as your class. Here, David is a street kid, so perhaps they could follow this pattern and have a standalone series about a nomad and about a corpo. That'd be a nice experiment. And who knows, perhaps you may get to see Johnny Silverhand in anime form down the line. But for now, that's my honest review of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Please do share your thoughts about it down below, and if you enjoyed this video, a cheeky sub would be much appreciated to help the channel grow. I'm Connor from Unleash the Tombs, banter, and we'll see you next time for another honest review. Cheers out.